Good morning, everybody. Today starts the first session in a number of sessions leading into the back to school season for people, whether you're going to school or not. This will be helpful for you how to study and remember. And why is this so important, how to study and remember? Well, what's the point of studying anything if you can't remember what you studied, right? This is a very, very clear and obvious problem. And a lot of people aren't remembering what they're studying, which means that they are wasting their time. And so we want to help you out in that. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what's exciting for you right now. What are you looking forward to in the near future? Going to have a sip of a very special beverage here. Very, very good. All right. So one of the things that we need to understand is the point of education. Why are we even bothering to educate ourselves? What's the truth about understanding and memory? Do you have to actually understand it before you memorize it? And fact versus opinion. That's all we'll be able to cover today. But we will have more on this series to be sure. And one of the amazing things about being able to know the point of why you're educating yourself is it already helps you remember more, as does knowing about fact versus opinion. So if you're educated about fact versus opinion, you're already ahead of the game in terms of being able to memorize, because you'll have some tools that we'll talk about today. So Ryan is here from Phoenix, says he hates reading because he forgets what he reads, so he uses a highlighter just about everything, so I know I read anything. It's sad, really. Well, Ryan, thanks for sharing that, for being candid about that problem. And when you do that, I want to compliment you. By being candid about your problems, you can start to figure out how to solve them. So if you go on magneticmarymethod.com, you can search note-taking, or go to magneticmarymethod.com/note-taking, and I'll give you there 5 strategies that are better than highlighting everything. I was in a similar situation, Ryan, so I know how that feels. When I was entering the doctorate program, I couldn't read. I tried highlighting everything, and I came up with some of those things that you'll learn there, and I think you'll find them very, very useful. Chanel is in the house. Good to see you, Chanel. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. You say maybe the reason why students cannot remember the material that they're learning in school is because it's not presented in a way that is interesting to them. Maybe they need a different approach to learning than just by learning for the test. Well, that's a good point, Chanel, but here's the thing. First of all, we're not just talking about studying and remembering for students. We're talking about studying and remembering for anybody, for anything. And here's another thing about that. I'm glad you raised the point, but here's the thing. There are things that are not interesting to people, and they study them anyway. And that's just the reality that we need to get to. And that's the point of education that we're going to talk about today. And for those of you just joining us, we're going to do a whole series about this, so we're not going to cover everything under the sun today. But if you're not subscribed to this channel, get subscribed. Hit thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's exciting for you recently. Ryan shared something, and that kind of candid honesty can help you get ahead. So continue that as well, because we can come up with solutions and resources for you. But I really want to stress something that Chanel points out. When we say, well, it's really not interesting to students, well, that's just the reality of information sometimes. And a lot of people over a long period of time have tried to figure out learning styles, learning types, and how can we make this or that information more interesting to this or that person. And at the end of the day, there are some things that need to be presented in ways that just aren't particularly interesting. And that ain't going to change. And so the reality is that the people have to change. They have to change their internal states, and they have to get it done, regardless of whether it's interesting or not. This is never going to change about information, unless, of course, we get, implants and all that jazz, which may or may not happen. Who knows? But along these lines, Adolfo posted earlier this morning, or this evening, wherever you are in the world, and he says, I received my grade for my second exam in world history, 101%. Now, how does that happen? Well, he had a bonus question. So you actually can get 101%. And he said, I would like to thank Anthony. This is in our Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind group, by the way. And he'd like to thank me for guiding me through 80% of my memory palaces, ancient China and India, as my bridging figure. So I actually appear in Adolfo's memory palace, which happens more often than you'd imagine, but always an honor and a pleasure. And he says, after viewing him speak Chinese and Sanskrit for over a year, he was the perfect choice. Well, thank you. 谢谢. 2 exams down, 1 to go. Thanks, brother. The exams, number 1, 95%. Exam 2, 101%. And he shared the actual screenshot of his tests here. So it was exam 1, it was 95%, and then exam 2 was 101%. Amazing. So everybody, thumbs up for Adolfo. Congratulations to Adolfo for that win. But he shows up, he does the work, and he uses the tools, and he continues to study and practice and implement and improve and ask questions, get involved, and that's what you get. And my reward is that I get to be in his memory as a bridging figure, which is amazing. And incidentally, in the Magnetic Memory Method Mastermind group, he also shared some of his imagery and what he's doing and how he's doing it, and amazing ideas. And one of the great things that happens is when you have a community around you is you get inspired, and people can share their mnemonic examples and so forth. And then he mentioned something I hadn't thought of for years, so now I've got lots to go and enjoy. But if you would like this kind of performance, and he's just pointing out the 95% and the 101%, but I know from the group that he's just been crushing it on his exams over and over and over again. And I know, to Chanel's point earlier, it's not necessarily all particularly interesting stuff that is particularly presented in an interesting way, because it's information, it's heavy, it's hard. So we got to get past this, information needs to be interesting to students all the time. There are things to learn that aren't particularly interesting, and we have to have other strategies internally. And hello to Daniel. Thanks for your question, and thanks for the clapping, Ryan. I'll get to your question in a second, Daniel, but I wanted to mention something. I do my best to reread one book every month, and usually I pull it off. And I'm rereading right now this wonderful classic from Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. And so I highly recommend that you do that, because one of the things that I found is a lot of people, their vision for themselves is just too small. And when it comes to Chanel's point there about information not being interesting. If you don't have a high enough vision for yourself, nothing is as interesting as it could be. So I highly recommend that book to you, because I'm enjoying rereading it. And also on the matter of rereading, I'm memorizing the Atma Bodha right now from the Fire of Self-Knowledge. And we'll get to this point later when we talk about the fundamentals of understanding versus memorization so that you can understand. Joey, good to see you, Joey. Wow, haven't seen your name for a while. Thank you for being here. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't already, and get to Daniel's question here in a second. But I wanted to let everybody know something that I find really odd, which is that this was a new video that not a whole lot of people were interested in. I mean, those who were really interested in it, we can see in the back end. But one of the most profoundly powerful memory exercises you can do is dream recall exercise. So Stefan, good friend of mine, was on the podcast. He has an incredible resource that we talk about and how you can use it, and you can just build it yourself if you want. The more important thing is the knowledge. So I highly recommend people go and check out that video and learn how to recall your dreams and start using your tools from your dreams. Because as you'll see in the discussion on that video, there's people who have done that and made great discoveries and improved their lives. And you can too. All right. Now, before we carry on, I did a survey. That's part of why we're doing this series on how to study and remember. And so I was very, very concerned to see that 40% of people said that their concerns about studying is that they haven't had adequate memory training. 40%. How is this possible? If you go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, Why haven't you done that? If you're answering that survey, what is failing you? How is this possible for this to be the case? I'd really love to challenge people to get it done, because I had in my email box today, Joel asking, so I went through your videos and I have a question. Why a letter of the alphabet for every memory palace? And that's a good question. And there's a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons is just simply an organizational device. It's also a generative device because you don't have to think about all this stuff. You just use the alphabet to help you generate the potential locations. But there are other things that the alphabet is useful for, such as organizing information and organizing it in multiple ways. And there's a lot of things that we get into in the masterclass about the alphabet where you can use it again and again. But I thank Joel for that question. And at the end of the day, if you know the memory tradition, the alphabet comes up quite a lot. So they used to call it the bestiary, which you would use animals and so forth to help you come up with lots of images and ideas, and you would always have images and so forth. But the reality is, in order to be really fast with these techniques, you do the work in advance. And the most generative system that there is that I know of is the alphabet. Now, numbers are also a generative system, but there's a little bit more heavy lifting in the beginning to get numbers working for you. But the alphabet, everybody knows the alphabet. Some people know multiple alphabets, right? And so if you don't have, if you're one of these 40% of people who doesn't have adequate memory training, take care of this. It's right in front of you, waiting to help you. And then, of course, there's more memory training. There's more details and granular stuff. And depending on how much you value yourself, there's more to learn and more guidance to be had. But at the basic level, there should not be 40% of people on this channel saying that that adequate memory training is what's holding them back. Time management may be part of that, organization, focus, and so forth. But these tools, when you develop them for yourself, they create more focus. So you got to learn how to invest in yourself, and you need to know what it is that helps you invest in yourself, which gets back to maybe you got to go step back a bit and read something like Awaken the Giant Within, because I believe so much in the giant within each and every one of you. I'm just speaking to the giant inside of you. That's it. And if you're not there yet, get there. It's easy. The tools are there. And I say easy in a way that may surprise you. This is called taking action, and taking action consistently. So in this series on how to study and remember on these live streams, we're going to go into a number of topics. I'll share with you at the end what some of the upcoming topics are. But today we're just going to start with the fundamentals, the absolute things that people just ignore, and they're so profound. Don't put the blinders on and think it doesn't apply to you and yada, yada, yada. It absolutely applies to you, and it's the most important thing of all. So back to Joel's question, why a palace for each letter of the alphabet? What are they used for? It's generative, it's organizational, and it helps you get to start making mental Lego like that. Bang, 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 because you don't have to think about what you're going to use to memorize all the time. You just think, oh, letter of the alphabet, and images come. But only if you're prepared. So if you don't have a vision for yourself that's large enough to actually get you to do something and complete a course, then get some adequate memory training. It's there right in front of you, ready to go. And here's the thing. I'll make it as easy as I possibly can for you and pop the link here in the screen so you can just click it and get yourself registered for some free memory training. But it isn't free. Understand that it isn't free. It's going to take time. It's going to take energy, but it's going to take such a I love that little weird face that shows up there. It's going to take such a small amount of time and energy if you would just sit down and do it. So in this series, we're going to talk about focus. We're going to talk about organization. We're going to talk about time management. And we're going to talk about limiting beliefs. Of course, these are important. And there's a lot of things that I've learned about studying better over the years. And we'll talk about those as well. We'll pick them up as we go along. And of course, if you have questions, pop them in. But at the end of the day, if you don't have those fundamentals, what are you waiting for? magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Get signed up. Finish that Memory Palace network, because it's just the basics. It's just absolutely essential. I don't know any person, memory competitor or memory expert that I've ever talked to that thinks they are going to do anything without a full, proper memory palace network. Everybody I know has multiple memory palaces, and they may organize them in different ways. You can organize them with the major, you can organize them with the alphabet, whatever. I personally think the alphabet is the easiest and the best system that there is for generating and organizing and all the other things that it does for you. All right, so let's check in with our chat and catch up with some of the questions. Daniel had said, well, first of all, let's say hi to Andres. Good to see you, Andres. And Goat is in the house. Good to see you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And again, Joey, so good to see you. So Daniel says, I'm curious if you've heard of Jim Quick. He claims to be a memory expert and is, from what I've seen, very interested and fair enough, I suppose, selling his memory training programs. Yes, I have heard of Jim Quick, and by all means, man, carpe diem and caveat emptor, all that stuff. But there's really what you need to think about is what are your goals and who's who you're going to invest your time in, and what do you think based on the existing record is going to happen based on different people that are out there. So by all means, as I say, carpe diem and caveat emptor. All right. So let's see. Daniel says, yes, that is a great book. Probably the first self-help book I ever read. Yeah, I wonder if it's a self-help book, I'm not even sure I understand what self-help actually means. Some people give it a bad flavor. Other people, they're just not doing anything. So I don't know, but it depends on what you mean by the self, which gets to the fire of self-knowledge, which at some point we will talk about. Because I think Tony Robbins is really switched on to what the self is. I didn't really realize it until I saw him live here in Brisbane. And what I understood from him is that he's pretty much a Vedantin, which was an amazing revelation. But I only made the connection in my head when I saw him live. So I'm not sure it's a self-help book in terms of you, the individual, but what the self really means, right? Like as in the self with a capital S. He's a very, very switched on Vedantin. Even if he's not a Vedantin, I would just use that as a short phrase for those who are in the know about all that. Insofar as that actually exists. Tat vam asi, right? All right, enough little puzzles here. Fernando is in the house, says, I only came across memory techniques recently. I didn't know this exists. Oh, Fernando, I'm not a man prone to envy, but man, do I ever have great feelings for you in terms of excitement, because this is a wild and wonderful, amazing adventure. You're going to have so much fun. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. I wish I could, basically what I'm saying is, without any envy in me, I wish I could start all over again, because it's so amazing what it does to your brain when you train. Just train. That's the important thing. Ryan asks, may I ask a question? You may. Please do. Ask all the questions that you like. This may be off topic or not, but I purchased the Mind Map book, Tony Buzan with Barry Buzan. I don't understand what radiant thinking means. Well, radiant thinking. Okay. So, look, I don't have, I've never met Barry, although I have met Buzan, and always a good time to show you this beauty right there. Thank you, Tony. By the way, I mean, I'll cover up the phone number anyway, but I always have two things on my desk when I'm doing these live streams. Tony's business card. I mean, unfortunately, he's up in the memory palace in the sky now, but amazing to have his business card and to call him up whenever the mood struck. And wow, amazing dude. And to have this. So good. I sometimes am wearing this actually on the live streams, but my hair covers it. Anyway, thank you for mentioning Tony. Now, radiant thinking. Again, I don't think I can cover all of it, but very, very briefly, one of the ideas with mind mapping is that you're reproducing the brain cell on paper. And you're going to have these tributaries or branches that stem out from a central core in the same way that a brain cell has a central core, or, anything really. I mean, when we get really into all the astrophysics and stuff like that, I mean, you keep going deeper and deeper into the cells and the subatomic particles and all that sort of stuff, then you just find out that there's nothing there, right? But in terms of just a cell, there's a central sort of thing, and these branches come out of that feed and radiate out from a center. So the branches in a mind map radiate from a central idea, and the more that you focus on a singular central idea, the more power these branches have to radiate effectively different ideas. So, whoa, lo and behold, look at this. I happen to have a mind map here. And so this is my central idea for what I'm working on, and each branch, and I should say this is a Tony Buzan style mind map. I was very fortunate to learn about how to do this from not only Buzan himself, but Phil Chambers, which was amazing. But this central idea has this powerful force that's pushing out, radiating all the other ideas. And each idea also radiates out from its own branch. But it's because of focus on a central principle, and there's a number of rules going on here. And as Tony Buzan told me once at dinner, the rules will set you free. And if you would just allow yourself to focus on the rules, such as the rules talked about in the free course at magneticmarionmethod.com/YT, and the link is in our chat there and down in the description. These rules set you free because you don't have to think about what to do next and how to do it. And then you radiate forth as radiant thinking suggests. You just, there's more ideas on that page than I have lifetimes to execute, just on that one mind map there. So the mind map is generative, but to get that nuclear power, you've got to focus on core ideas, and then bang, it just explodes. And this is just one mind map in multiple mind maps, and really, you have no idea unless you practice it. Like 90 days of practicing mind maps will completely change everything in your life. And why 90 days? Well, pick a different number, but stick to it. Be consistent. But it's a similar focus, and it's a very good focus and profoundly powerful focus to pick something to generate. And so back to this question about why alphabet and why a letter is because it generates more when you focus on singular things. Does that make sense? I know it does. That's a rhetorical question. Of course it makes sense. It makes so much sense that unfortunately a lot of people just are blind to the logic, and it is very, very powerful. Adolfo is in the house. Good to see you, Adolfo. We were sharing your success story today, and if you look through the chat, we have a congratulations for you there from Ryan, and wonderful, wonderful to have you here, and thank you for sharing that story. I'm so really honored to be part of your memory palace journey and just an image there in your head. That's amazing. And I hope that to meet you one day and be better able to use you in my own, from getting you in my chemical bath from real-time sort of stuff. And that's another thing. I would highly, highly encourage you to all go out and find your mentors and spend some time with them in real life, as I was able to do with Tony Buzan, because you can read all the books and so forth, but when you actually get to train with people in person, it just changes the game. It really changes your head. It changes your chemistry because they live in your chemistry in a way that they can't through the internet, and so forth. Although there might be a way for them to live more in your head, even if it's through the internet. And to that end, let me tell you about something very, very exciting, which is very limited, but if you're interested, come on in and get your application in for the Platinum program, which is something that a lot of people ask me about all the time. I do on a very limited basis. You can go to magneticmarionmethod.com/YTP, and I'll pop that link in the chat for you there. that is clickable or typable, and you can put in your application for the Platinum program and get some of that generative power that comes from more close contact as someone is in your brain. So if that's not there by the time that you get around to it, that's because it has closed. But yeah, I can only just relate it back to what happened to me when I spent more time with Tony Buzan and had that transformation deep inside the mind. So that's at magneticmarymethod.com/YTP. I will not be able to take very many people, but I will definitely take your application very seriously if you care to show it. Let me see here. So checking in with our chat again. Joey says, radiant thinking is what you do become when you use mind maps consistently. Yeah, I think you do become more radiant when you do things more consistently. Like, for example, with all the meditation that I've been doing, whoa, it's like you do become more radiant. But in terms of how I understand mind mapping and the radiant thinking, it really is, do you actually have the discipline to focus in on single things based on principles and rules that are generative and productive, as opposed to the lack of discipline and willy-nilly, la-di-da sort of way that most people go about things, right? And so the mind map rules, the laws, as he called them, the laws of mind mapping, they are meant to be generative and productive for those who will allow the rules to set themselves free. In the same way that Shakespeare was willing to allow the rules of the sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet, not the Petrarchan sonnet, but there's other kinds of sonnet rules, or iambic pentameter. And yes, he broke some of those rules of iambic pentameter from time to time to time. But at the end of the day, it's the consistent sticking with the rules that enables for the massive productivity. And if you even think further about the structure of the plays, he had a two-world syndrome in almost every play, which helped him to produce a particular kind of entertainment. And there was a certain more or less consistent adherence to a particular dramatic structure. And he often did psychomachia, which is seen in Othello. Anyway, whatever. The whole point here is not to talk about dramatic theory, but the point is that he had a theory, he had rules and constraints that he placed upon himself, and they were very, very productive. And they were so productive, we still remember that stuff to this day. And, get thee glass eyes, and like a scurvy politician, pretend to see what thou seest not, yada, yada, yada. Shakespeare, awesome dude. All right, so if you want to apply for the Platinum program, go on over to magneticmarymethod.com/YTP, and I'll see you in there. Let's check in further with our chat. And Amina is here from Algeria. Awesome. Thank you for being here. Daniel says, psychologically empowering. Yes, we aim to do that. Ryan says, still don't understand. Well, let me know if you have more questions. What is it that you don't understand about radiant thinking? And maybe try not to understand it, but just do it. Do some mind mapping and actually follow the rules. Forget about understanding. And that's one of the big things that we're going to talk about. Be willing to put aside your need to understand and do without needing to understand. Very, very important. Daniel says, I contrast him with Eckhart Tolle, whose work I was not impressed with. Oh, that's a shame, Daniel. I'd love to know more about what you're not impressed about with Eckhart Tolle. In some sense, I mean, I don't judge your lack of being impressed. There's only one thing that I'm unimpressed with, really, by Eckhart Tolle. And I have to say, he's probably more right than I am, but I'm not him. I don't know. All right, let's see here. Mohammed is in the house. Good to see you, Mohammed. Thanks for being here. You say, I suppose it's all the power of association. Yeah, association is certainly what we need to be working on, and keeping in mind that it's about recombination of pre-existing elements, right? And that's something that a lot of people do not really understand. And it's because they simply don't train. They don't ever complete the courses or whatever. But if they did, they would understand that you don't have to work so hard to associate. It's not that it's some special, thing, association. what's special is, do you have the tools? Are you prepared with the tools so that you can rip it out in a flash? And that's back to Joel's question about the use of the alphabet. And you don't have to take my word for it, because it's in all the good memory trainings. And the poor ones, they don't get into the power of the alphabet, which is a shame. A big shame. A big shame indeed, actually. But I know for a fact from certain experiences in the world of marketing training that a lot of those guys don't think that their audiences can handle it. They think their audiences are filled with sheeple, and they just hide the actual techniques that they use, and then they teach people the watered down version because they don't think that they would have a business if they were to actually talk about what they really did. Oh yes, strange things have been done under the midnight sun of marketing. All right, so Sammy is in the house. Good to see you, Sammy. You've been training with the MMM for the last couple of weeks, and we'll get back on track with it. Awesome, awesome. One of the things to do is just keep getting back on track. That is its own practice. People do take pauses from things, and then they come back. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Goat says, yep indeed. Dave, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but you say, how do you remember with aphantasia? Well, first of all, go to magneticmemory-method.com/aphantasia, and there's an exercise there for you that will help. Then make sure you take this free course. Aphantasia is not an excuse. It's not anything. Lynn Kelly recently came out. She's Australia's senior memory competitor and very impressive mnemonist. Knows so much about mnemonics. Speaking of good memory training that includes references to the alphabet, she's got it, and really important. And so she has talked about her having aphantasia. We have an interview coming out with her very soon on the podcast where we sort of, go back and forth over it, what it means and so forth. I don't really agree that even such a thing exists, but whatever. I think it's probably a linguistic trick, and people are hypnotizing themselves into thinking they have a problem that doesn't exist. It's actually a superpower, if anything, because you can concentrate better. But let me leave my opinion out of it, even if my opinion is guided by some of the critical scrutiny we're going to talk about today. And maybe we'll come back to this aphantasia point, because it's very, very important. David is in the house. Good to see you, David. Thanks for being here. And wonderful always to have some familiar faces and new faces as well. Lady B is here wondering, if you want to be smarter than you are, why do people always say read more? I feel like I don't learn more reading. Where do you start if you want to be smarter? Well, Lady B, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I suggest you go and watch the live stream on making a vision statement and create a vision for what exactly it is that you want. Why focus on being smarter when that is just so vague and unclear? Why not pick something more specific than be smarter? That would be something I would suggest. All right. So creating a vision statement can help you with that, and I hope that you will go through that training, and I would love to see your vision statement if you create it. I'd love to see all your vision statements if you would create them. Please do. They're very, very important. And without one, well, you know what they say, if you don't have a vision for your life, someone else certainly does, and they probably are happy to turn you into a slave. All right, so Lady Chick is here from Bahamas, but Berlin from the Bahamas. Also, so you're in Berlin at the moment, but from the Bahamas originally. Kannst du Deutsch? All right, so Mohammed says, any tips on how to learn Arabic fast? Yes. Start with magneticmemory-method.com/YT. Learn how to create an alphabetical memory palace. And shukran for your question. All right, Harry is here from San Francisco. Again, excellent. Thank you for being here. Good to see you. Hit the thumbs up if you're just joining us. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what is exciting you recently. Let me know in the chat, what is exciting to you recently? What's the most interesting and exciting thing that's going on right now, recently? Reclaiming Life says, we don't need to stop watching the live stream for 218 to watch the video on YTP. Could you explain briefly what the Platinum program is and where it goes beyond the masterclass? I would love to do that, Reclaiming Life, but it's application only. Thank you for asking, by the way. And if you're interested, just apply, and The explanation is that it's a 3-month program for highly motivated individuals who have very, very specific goals. Hopefully they've already done a vision statement, which I assume that you have, or something like that, close to that. And, you can go and visit that YTP link in the future. It may still be up there. It may not, but this is an opportunity for a 3-month training program that really, why platinum, right? Well, platinum is one of these substances that's very, very difficult to erode. It's very strong. It's very powerful. And I was kind of thinking of platinum albums, like lots and lots and lots of information. So you don't have to pause the live stream. Of course, you can keep hold of that link and check it out after the live stream and submit an application. And I will be in touch with those who I think are appropriate for this program. And I appreciate your interest and your question. I hope that's an adequate answer. And if not, well, the application process itself is the ultimate way to get the answer at magneticmarymethod.com/YTP. But if you want your memory to be platinum in terms of free from corrosion and massive, like platinum albums that just sell so many records, and you're able to do that with your mind, whatever your goal is, as long as you have an adequate memory state, memory vision for yourself, then you probably have a chance to be accepted into the program. All right. So Lady Chick says, just started. Excellent, excellent. Maricela is in the house. See now, this is one of those things about just how profound primacy effect is. But I hope that Reclaiming Life caught that. Maricela, good to see you. You say, hello guests, hello Magnetic Mary Method Masterclass. I just finished. I'm always so happy to see so many Masterclass people here on the live streams helping support. You are all my Shifu, for sure. You say you just finished some yoga positions, need some practice to relax and enjoy studying. Excellent. Good to see you here, and thanks for checking out the replay. All right, Jonathan. Saludos. Well, good to see you here. I have never been to Peru, but I hope things are going great there. Excellent. I want to visit Peru very, very badly. All right, so... well, we haven't seen you for a long time. Acro, was this... I'm going to guess here. Was it Shane? I think it was Shane. Let me know. You can publicly shame me if that I got that wrong. But that's what I remember. Oh, I'm tempted to go look it up. But in any case, let's see here. Acro says, oh, maybe you're gone. You have access... you still have access? Actually remodeled your house, so Memory Palace has changed? Oh, well... you're gone. Anyway, I'll be checking out later. Make sure I remembered your name correctly. Bye. But yeah, you should still have access if you are in the masterclass. Maricela, Reclaiming Life says to Maricela, see, there it got back in. Awesome to hear that you're doing yoga. I just started recently and have been surprisingly impressed with it on multiple levels. Yeah, I've been doing yoga for a couple of years. Very simple stretching that falls under the rubric of yoga, but it's amazing what it can do for you. And I just ignored it and doubted it for so long. Why did I wait so long? Anyway, Lady B says, so you don't believe reading makes you smarter? It's too vague. No, I just think that your goal of smarter is too vague, but reading can make you smarter. Adolfo asks, is this the new advanced memory training program? It's definitely advanced, but this is not the new course. There is a new course coming. This is a program, and it is application only, so anybody is free to apply, and I will be in touch if your application is accepted. All right. Thanks for asking. Thank you for your interest. The new course, I'm being so mysterious about it simply because it's worth the wait. So stay tuned for news about that new course. If you're having trouble with your brain and you can't come up with these tools, etc., it's going to really help you a lot, this new course. But it's probably going to be another 2 weeks, 3 weeks before I announce it, because really putting in the extra elbow grease while we're waiting for the new book to be finished. And one of the delays with the book is that we've only just, I wanted a particular photographer. His name's William Gordon here in Brisbane. And one of the reasons why I wanted him in particular is because he's also a mnemonist who uses these techniques. So it's very, very profound what he's going to put together for the book. And just looking at some of the drawings that he made based on oh wow, finally, like this is gonna be amazing. So that's very good, and very honored to have someone who understands these techniques through practice actually doing the photography for the book. So I know there's all kinds of things. I think it was David who said, who's here now, who said that, I do one thing and then the next thing you know, there's 3 more things that I've done. And it does seem that way, but rest assured that there will never be, as far as I have any say in the matter, an end to the productivity. And this goes back to radiant thinking. Because as I said, this will take me 12 lifetimes to finish. And I just keep doing great things as much as I can for people, as I hope that you will too. Become a warrior of the mind, as Buzan would call it. You are called every minute to be your higher self. And if I can help you, then through the Platinum program, please register for that at magneticmurraymethod.com/YTP, or better say, apply for a spot. And let's see here. Jonathan says, is it possible or better to use a virtual memory palace than a real memory palace? Your English is very good, Jonathan. Thank you. Is it possible? Yeah, you can do it. I don't really. I'm experimenting more with the whole idea of virtual memory palaces, but I really think it's, in my experience and with helping so many people through what I know about them, it's just not really a good use of time compared to the real memory palaces. And maybe Adolfo can speak to that because he's spoken to it before, especially in terms of VR memory palaces. Now, here's the thing that I would just say, right? Whether it's a virtual memory palace that you've invented, whether it's a movie memory palace, and I'm doing more work with memory palaces from movies these days, just to strengthen my skills and so forth, or whether it's an actual like VR helmet memory palace. Here's the thing: at the end of the day, memory palaces are already virtual. Everything you already see in front of you and that you create in your mind is already quote unquote virtual. You can go read, Plato's The Republic if you want some evidence around that from a philosophical angle. You could read The Fire of Self-Knowledge for some evidence around that if you like. Heck, you could read, I've got inside of here some paper, and what that is the Chinese characters and the pinyin for the Heart Sutra, which I'm also just doing some character study in Chinese at the moment, which is a lot of fun. You could read all that stuff. They're all trying to get you to understand one thing, that your memory palaces are always already virtual. That's what the whole spiritual traditions are all about. All right. So, Lady B, what are your 3 favorite books? Well, right now, The Fire of Self-Knowledge and Awaken the Giant Within and Happiness Beyond Thought. But my favorite books, really, I really wouldn't give it a top 3. I love to reread books often, and as I'm reading them, they're my favorite books. If they're not my favorite, out of there. Life is too short for boring books. But in terms of my favorite 3 books, yeah, I wouldn't want to be pressed. I would rather think of that answer as, what were my favorite 3 books in different periods of time? So what would you like to know? Let me know. Would you like to know elementary school, high school, BA, MA number 1, MA number 2, or PhD? And I don't say that, to put out my laurels, but I probably had favorite books during each of those periods. But great question. And thank you for asking. Thank you for being interested. MPC Tube says, have you tried using animals to represent the alphabets? Well, yes, and that's the way that some people do it. That's the technique that I refer to. That's called the bestiary. If you'd like some training on creating a bestiary that I think is the best I've ever read, make sure to read Memorycraft by Lynn Kelly. Interview with her coming out soon. And wow, real deal memory training there. All right. So, hope I didn't miss anybody's questions here. Let's rock on a little bit. Reclaiming Life says, anytime we hear a new course, we start to have a positive Pavlovian response because we know how wonderful our experiences have been with the current course and how helpful all the new additions are. Well, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And that's good to know that there's a positive Pavlovian effect. If anything, I hope that everybody uses these techniques to have a positive Pavlovian effect with their own minds, which is very powerful to be able to do that. Adolfo says, you're killing me. I need to be fed. Okay, well, it's coming soon. I'm going to do my best to get it out by the end of August, okay? And the book, hopefully by the end of the year. But again, we're putting like more elbow grease into all this stuff. And the thing with the new course is that I want all the modules, there's 8 modules in the new course, I want them to interconnect. And so I'm just pushing a little bit more, as I often teach you, like in the live stream on creating a vision statement. Why? 5 levels of why. And so we're going the extra mile. And this is almost done. Then I got to record everything. And then, there's a lot of technical this, that, and the other thing that has to be in place. But it's coming. And the book, we really needed to wait until we could photograph and do it. It's really a large number of photographs. There's a lot of stuff in order to do this with that extra, je ne sais quoi. And it's just going to take the time that it takes, basically. And I think that you'll appreciate the extra elbow grease. But I appreciate you needing to be fed. And of course, there's an elaborate library of past things that if you, like me, are very interested in keeping the garden of memory alive, I reread one book a month, pretty much every month, on purpose. And that's why I'm rereading Awaken the Giant Within, and that's why I'm starting to memorize some of this text, also to give me a bit of topic relief from some of the other memory projects I got going on. All right. Reclaiming Life says, in regards to virtual memory palaces, wouldn't the memory palaces that we acquire from our dreams be virtual? Great question. And what I would say is, what memory palace you could ever use is not already virtual. How is it possible for a memory palace not to be inherently always already virtual? All right. Now, there might be an answer to that, and I can think of one way in which that would be true. But let's see. I Hacked It says, you have aphantasia, or aphantasia. Not sure which way to pronounce it. Aphantasia, some people say. Listen, I don't even think it exists in my true, honest heart of hearts, but I have a very low visual imagination, and it's never stopped me from being creative. It's never stopped me from using memory techniques, and I don't think it's stopped anybody. And Lynn Kelly says she has it, and she performs very, very well in competition. She's obviously a well-learned scholar who uses these techniques, and I can vouch for the quality of her writing and the depth of insight in what she talks about in her books, that she legitimately uses these techniques and goes the extra mile with them. So I see zero evidence that if aphantasia exists, that it should cause any problems for anybody. Davlavi says, new book? Yes, almost is getting closer to being done. Almost is a dangerous word, but you're gonna love it. Adolfo says, Jonathan, I've invested a ton on VR MPs and the ROI was minimal. I sometimes use Matterport, which is a real estate site, for my virtual MPs, but real MPs are superior to virtual MPs, hands down. Yes, I would agree. Elvis is in the house. Thanks for being here, Elvis. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Elvis says, do you know the best book for improving memory and reading? And what are the areas that you think anyone should improve? Great question. I know many, many books. If you search books on my YouTube channel or magneticmerrymethod.com, you'll see many book recommendations. The important thing is not the books always. It's, do you do anything with that? And unfortunately, many people don't. But many people do. And because they do, they get results. It's about action more than this or that book at the end of the day. But if you want to know some of my recommendations, listen to the podcast. If I've had them on the podcast, then you pretty much know that I recommend their stuff. So Brad Zupp, Lynn Kelly, Mark Shannon, those are the big people that come to mind. Tony Buzan, of course. Phil Chambers, definitely Phil Chambers books. Wow, amazing stuff. Just, find somebody you trust, somebody who's actually, I'm always like, who's helping you get results in advance, right? And if they're doing that and you like and trust them, Give their other stuff a try. It's really that simple. Carpe diem and caveat emptor, as I often like to say. All right, so Reclaiming Life says, a memory palace doesn't need to be virtual when you actually walk through it in real life. When creating it and doing your recall rehearsal. Bang, presto, and razzmatazz answer. I think that's exactly what I was thinking for there. All right. Jonathan said, I refer to a game in Steam. Its name is Monks VR. Its description is Monks VR is a software for building memory palaces in virtual reality. Indeed, indeed. So give it a try, man. What's the worst that can happen? All right, is everybody ready to rock and roll and get started with today's presentation? If so, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the chat if that sounds good to you, and we will start to talk about how to study and remember, start our foundations, and absolutely enjoy this wild ride. But, let me know if you're actually interested in any of that, because we don't have to do today's presentation if you're not interested. Give me some love in the chat. Let's see if the 80-20 rule is alive and in the house. And I'll just sing a little. Idam shuri ram countea kushet ram iti abhidyate eta yo vedi tem prahukshetrajna iti tad vida ha shetrajnam chapi mam vedi sarva shetrashu berata shetrajnayo Yanam yata yanam matamama ahim atma gurakesha sara bhuta athyata amadischa madhyam cha bhutanam manta eva cha. All right, well, that's a pretty underwhelming response. Let's rock on nonetheless. Oh, the 80-20 rule. Actually, is that 80-20 rule? I don't know. I'm not doing the math in real time in my head, but it's good enough. I'm sure you're all driving, right? Great way to learn. Okay, so, let's get started today with how to study and remember. What is the point of education? Now, why are we doing this as our foundational session on how to study and remember more? Is because a lot of people do not think about the point of what they're doing and why they're doing it. But if you're on point and you're really, really focused, you're already going to help your memory, right? If you understand the point of the education that you're taking. So Lady B earlier, said, will it make me smarter? Well, is the point to be smarter? I challenge you that, because there are a lot of people who are super smart, but it ain't doing nothing for them. It ain't doing nothing at all. They're actually so smart they talk themselves out of having the lives that they want to lead. Your intelligence can work against you, right? So what is the point of education? What is the point of being smarter? Really think about that often. Every time you sit down to read a book, every time you start a course, every time you step into a lecture hall for a new thing or a talk, whatever it is. This doesn't just have to do with being a student. This has to do with anything that you're going to learn. What is the point? That will help your memory because it'll help you focus and keep revisiting it. What's the point? What's the point? Because here's the thing, the author, the teacher, they will not always be telling you the point. They will not always be, it would get repetitive and boring if they kept on saying, remember, this is the point. Remember, this is the point. Oh, by the way, did you know that this is the point? No, they're not always going to do that for you. You have to think about that. You have to make the connections in your head. And if you keep and you hold on to that point, you're going to remember more automatically better. Because you need to make the connections in your head. And what better way to make the connection than to be intimately familiar with the point? Now, since we're not talking about studying anything in particular, we have to generalize a little bit here, but you'll find this useful. Because the point of of education is usually this, and a lot of people don't think about it. It's to create more opportunity for yourself, right? Isn't that what you're in there for most of the time? To create more opportunity. At the end, you want to be able to do more. You want to be able to see more so that you can see more opportunities and options for getting involved with this or that, right? That's a key thing there. So what's the opportunity, right? Think about the point and the opportunity. And what is the opportunity it's going to create? If you're going to go and read a book like this and maybe do a memory project, like what's the opportunity here? What is it that it's going to enable you to see in terms of future opportunities? Or what is it going to do for you that's going to allow you to actually engage in the world in a higher level? So create more opportunity is the major point of education. You will automatically remember more if you can hold on to that point. And you might want to memorize the opportunity and the point that you're doing it. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. What you get reflects what you put in. What you will get from any education, any educational effort reflects what you put in. So the more that you focus on the point, and the more you know that you're an opportunity-oriented learner, then the more you're going to remember automatically. You don't necessarily need to have all the whiz-bang memory techniques, although they help and they're absolutely essential for most of us. You've got to remember that what you take out is a reflection of what you put into the process, right? So that's a huge thing. It's a huge, huge point. And those who have eyes to see and ears to hear, they will take this and run with it, and it will massively improve everything you do. So how are you going to get started with this? Well, you could do a little bit of self-inquiry, a little bit of self-reflection. And every time you read a book, what's the point? What's the opportunity? And maybe you want to spend some time on what are your fears, right? What's your fears when you go in reading this book? Are you going to forget everything? Or is it going to waste your time? Just be open and honest about it. And that can really, really help you, because you can put aside those fears because you've externalized them, right? And then you can put more in because you know that you have those fears. And I suggest that you just take those fears and let them go, because you can't predict what's going to happen when you start a course or you read a book or anything like that. You just dive in, but you know what you're worried about, and you can maybe symbolically, a little bit of magic, write it on paper, all your fears, and light it on fire, and literally try it, see what happens. Now, what's another point of education? Well, it's to help solve the problems of life, right? We educate ourselves to help solve the problems of life. So what's the point? What's the general point? What's the specific points? But what are the specific problems we're trying to solve here, right? So when you look at, some of the successful books in the world, they're trying to solve very, very specific problems. If you can hold on to what those problems are, you're more likely to get yourself through the book. So just take an example like Maps of Meaning by Jordan Peterson. Great book, but he's not necessarily telling you again and again and again what the problem is that you're trying to solve. But if you can keep in mind what it is, because it's all laid out in the introduction, then you can get yourself through the book a lot better and remember more about what's being said in there, because you're holding on to this principle that the point of the book is to solve certain problems in life, right? But not just solve them. Solve them calmly, solve them in a way that creates win-win outcomes, and as much as it's possible for the long term, so that calm persists and the win-win outcomes persist over the long term, insofar as that's possible. Now, that might be your wish, but you again need to let go of the outcome of that actually happening so you can be full and present and remember more, because you have that free area in your mind to just be part of the ride and hold on to the point without any promise of any particular thing coming out the other end. So this is very, very important. Let's check in with our chat here. Good to see you, Christian. It's been a while since we met up on a live stream. Wonderful that you're here. No need to apologize. I'm glad you were using the fundamentals of studying. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Jonathan says, Jonathan, thanks, Adolfo. Thank you for your opinion. Thank you, Adolfo. And thank you, everybody, for being here. Harvinder is in the house. Namaste. Good to see you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. And so I really, really hope that those who have eyes to see and ears to hear really take this, run with it, and enable it to help give you a firmer foundation when you go to learn. That you're there to solve problems. You're there to have more opportunity. And if you can keep that in mind, it creates much more energy and focus and helps you remember more immediately, because you make more connections as you're reading. And if you don't have those things, then go back, make sure you create a vision statement, because that can help you in those areas when you have those things just prevalent to you. We've talked in that training about the role of a treasure map as well, and that treasure map can help keep that focus. My treasure map, I see it every single day, and it's amazing how much that helps remember to keep everything connected moving forward at all times. All right, so let's talk about some horrible, horrible truths about education that a lot of people find horrible and horrifying, and yet they are also the same truths that will set you free. Education is always self-directed. It's always self-directed. You are you, and no one else is going to do it for you. No one else is going to do any of it for you. No one's going to read the books for you. No one's going to show up at the class for you. There ain't going to be no, instant download. Maybe in the future, but you sure you're going to want to pay the price for the instant download? And is it going to really be knowledge? Who knows? And why wait? Because we don't know if that future is coming. And I'm sure that if it does, it's going to be filled with meaningful advertising, right? Yeah, real meaningful advertising. Honda Civic. Ooh. I still can't believe these people, their sophisticated advertising technology still doesn't know that I don't drive cars and probably never will again, unless it's a rental. And amazing the things they advertise to me that their whiz-bang laser targeting hasn't figured out I ain't interested in. All right. So it's always self-directed. And if you need help on that, there are some links in the description below that will give you my take on the Feynman technique and absolutely erasing fear about the need for self-direction. And just dive in. It'll help your memory to get rid of that fear and to embrace self-direction. Very, very important. Now, here's another horrible truth, but the thing that will be the best truth on the planet for you if you take it seriously, and that's that hard work does not equal good results. You can work like crazy, and there are all kinds of people who work so hard, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're getting good results and they're not getting away what it is that they want from the study. And that's often because they just simply don't have a good enough vision statement and they haven't followed some of these tips that we just helped you with today. So yeah, don't ever think that hard work is some sort of promissory ticket to the promised land. It ain't. And it's not going to be anytime soon. You don't have to work hard. It doesn't have to be work at all. It can be fun. It can be play in the kingdom of memory heaven. The other truth is that rote learning is poorly understood. It's so misunderstood. And so it's not that rote learning is a crime when people do it. It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's very, very poorly understood. And so that means that, like mnemonics, it's useless when it's misused. And so there's all these people who are just like, well, I pounded out, bam, 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 bam. Well, that's not what rote learning is, and it's not what mnemonics are. Mnemonics do involve some sort of repetition, different kinds of repetition, but they're very, very streamlined, and they're scalable, and they are beautifully creative. But there are certain ways that traditional rote learning can also be beautiful and creative. And so what we need to do is we need to learn how to make sure that any repetition we do is always creative, it's always generative, and back to what we were talking about before, an exemplary of radiant thinking. Radiant repetition. Maybe that's a new sort of thing that we need to do. Radiant repetition. I like that. I think that we will get Tony Busan's blessing from the Great Memory Palace in the sky automatically. All right. So, very good. I think I just got a message from Tony Buzan and the Great Memory Palace in the sky. He said, go for it, man. Radiant repetition. Rock on. Okay. Thank you, Tony. Let's see here. Reclaiming Life says, another parallel between Anthony and JMG. Neither has a car, nor do they want one. All right. So, great. I wonder what the other parallels are that are lurking, if you haven't mentioned them before. If you have, I either wasn't paying attention or haven't noticed, because one thing that is not parallel is ease of contact. All right. So here's the thing. Moving to our next topic, and I think it's absolutely critical to understand this, is that understanding is something that occurs over time. And there are so many people who worry that reading without understanding can harm you. Well, to tell you the truth, maybe. But we actually read so that we understand. The assumption is you don't understand this, therefore you're reading it. Why am I rereading this book this month, or these books this month? Because I assume that I haven't milked them of all their value. And there's more to understand, right? There's more connections to be made. We read so that we understand. And not understanding can't really harm you in any particular way, because that's what reading is for, is to understand. And there's a link to a video on memory experts and their biggest mistakes that they make, and the nonsense things that some memory experts say that should know better. And the first one there is that we memorize so that we can understand. So in this book I'm memorizing, this is a translation and an interpretation of the Atmabodha by Shankaracharya. And this is an absolutely amazing text. And I decided to memorize potentially all of it, because I realized that, yes, there's this intellectual understanding at a glance when I read it, but what about understanding it permanently, insofar as permanence is possible? And there's this wonderful, well, actually everything unlocks, the understanding unlocks because of memorizing it. So, it says there in the second part that just as chopping wood is the indirect and fire the direct cause of cooking, spiritual practice is the indirect cause, and self-knowledge is the direct cause of liberation. Now, I understood that in passing in just, reading it, but then memorizing it, reflecting deeply upon it is amazing. And when I was making the decision, I'm going to memorize this thing, I'm going to work on memorizing it, I thought, do I have to memorize the opening? And then I just thought, go for it, man, because there's probably something to be understood there. Because all it says is, I am composing this treatise on self-knowledge for those who are purified and peaceful, calm of mind, free of craving, and desirous of liberation, right? And so I just thought, do I have to memorize that? And I thought, yeah, I must, because there must be something to understand there. And because I memorized it, I realized, wait a second, there's a contradiction here, isn't there? Free of craving and desirous of liberation? What? So I then started to think about this. How is that possible? How is that possible? And then as I memorize some more and think more and contemplate deeply from within, I come to understand, wait a second. You can have that contradiction because you already are what you're seeking, right? So you can be free of craving and desirous of liberation because you need to hold on to the understanding that you are what you are seeking, right? And then you think about the difference between spiritual practice and self-knowledge as being, the real key to liberation is self-knowledge. And practice is just or spiritual practice, better said, is this kind of, indirect cause. When you put the two together, bam, but you actually really are most aided by self-knowledge, right? Because it actually guides your practice. It makes sure that you're practicing better. Anyhow, that's just an example of understanding more precisely because I memorized it, and I never would have come to this understanding in any other way. So I read more and memorize more so that I might understand more. Very, very important. Now, if that's too heavy of an example, let me go back into the memory archives. This is near Ord Road. Very, very dark and difficult times I used to read to escape. And one of the things that I loved to do was read novelizations. So I remember very, very intensely reading Gremlins 2. And the word ramification comes up. Ramification. I'm just a kid in elementary school, right? Ramification. What the heck does this word mean? And I remember allowing myself to puzzle it through and see if by context I could figure it out. Now, there's many examples of this. I remember trying to puzzle through and figure out the word hilarious, for example. And it was just beautiful. It's delayed gratification. Now, there's nothing wrong with looking up words, pausing, stopping the tape, so to speak, and looking things up in dictionaries. But I used to delay it and see if I could figure it out. But I would remember that word and try to find it. And I had to do this as a kid and try to find it based on memory. And I wasn't using memory techniques or anything. I had no idea that they existed. But I'd go, and we used to have a family dictionary. It was like a big deal, this family dictionary. And look up words. And I remember doing this with ramification. I don't know exactly how I memorized it. Yeah, I think as kids, we maybe just hold on to that stuff better. But I remember doing this multiple times with books, coming across these words and delaying going and looking them up and holding it in memory and knowing that I wanted to go and check it out later. And then I would either be right or wrong, but it's just the most amazing thing. So you don't have to understand to memorize. You simply don't. It's almost the opposite. You can memorize and understand better because you have it in your mind to roll it around. And this is very, very important. So that's an example from here and from Gremlins 2. Could things be more opposite? Well, perhaps not, because I'm sure they're basically the same at the end of the day. I'm pretty sure that Gremlins 2 is just as spiritual a text as the Atma Bodha. And, I dare you to change my mind. So the point is you won't always understand. Why would you want to? That's the whole joy of learning. Let go of the need to understand, but learn to memorize, hold the things in mind that you would like to learn more about and explore later, and puzzle it through a little bit. Challenge yourself, and then look it up later. And there's lots of ways that you can remember what it was that you wanted that are non-invasive and non-intrusive and don't involve highlighting books. So, for example, you can just put a dot in the margin. Not so easy with a Kindle book, but I like a little dot sometimes. That's a very, very powerful technique. Although there are times when I do like, or I have liked in the past, highlighting. And we'll be talking about those at some point in the future. But let go of the need to understand all the time. Allow yourself to swim in it, absorb it, and understand that you can understand by virtue of plowing forward. So back to Lady B earlier and books and reading and all that jazz. Here's the thing. You can just understand as you go along, but it's what you collect as you go along, right? And you're probably only going to collect a percentage of the material, but it's what you collect. And it's the accretion of value, as I used to like to call it all the time during my graduate studies. I used to love that term, the accretion of value, the accretion of philosophical value, the accretion of narrative value, the accretion of ethical value, blah, 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 blah. It's like sediment collecting, right? And that pure, beautiful, raw, unadulterated, massive grit that accumulates through the accretion of value. But you got to let go of the need to understand everything. Believe me, I wouldn't have read a single philosophical book in my life if I had to understand everything. You understand by reading multiple books sometimes. We'll mention Deleuze in a little bit, but on my other YouTube channel, someone said, "Thank you so much for explaining Deleuze." And I was like, yeah, no problem, man. But at the end of the day, the reason that I understand it is because I didn't try to understand it all. I just kept reading Deleuze, reading commentaries on Deleuze. I was very lucky to have one of the most profound thinkers about Deleuze as a professor. His name is Manuel de Landa. His books on Deleuze are mind blown, but you got to cross-index it, right? So you read the source, you go back and read some commentary on the source, you read the source again, etc., etc. But that sediment picks up. You skill yourself. But if you just have to understand everything, good luck. That's not the right attitude. But a lot of people are filled with fear. So I have some fearless memory secrets for you based on my own version that I use of the Feynman technique, and that's here on YouTube, and the link is for you down in the description below. Check out that video. It'll help you, I'm quite sure. And you got to understand something, right? No one can memorize everything, but you can remember more than enough to perform, right? You can. And A+ students and experts, they produce variants on key ideas. It's not always about verbatim stuff. There's a lot of monkeys out there who can quote this, that, and the other thing word for word, but they don't know it. They don't understand it. They don't actually have any expertise about it. But can you produce it in different words, right? Can you explain it with multiple metaphors? Accuracy requires the ability to produce alternative descriptions. Very, very powerful. So there's some books that I would recommend to you to read. How to Write a Sentence and How to Read One by Stanley Fish. Really, really helpful in this regard. And he's just a great thinker. And also, I was very blessed and honored to have as a committee member on part of my PhD and a course with him in the classical realm of my doctoral studies, Matthew Clark, A Matter of Style. And that's some powerful stuff right there. Read that book. But there was another mentor that I always had, kind of a weird oddball cat. Now, I don't know who he's trying to look like here with this mustache, but one of the things that I had a hang up on, and this has everything to do with understanding, is that I used to, punish myself about public speaking because I say and ah and all this sort of stuff from time to time. And I went through all kinds of practices and strategies to eliminate ums and ahs because I was taking medication and had to give lots of presentations in university. And because of lithium and other antipsychotics that they had me on at the time, I was like literally all the time. And I'd sometimes get, alternative assignments and all kinds of razzmatazz things that would allow me to skip giving presentations, but that was only making me weaker instead of stronger. And one day I was just totally entranced and entertained by this character here. And I realized that he's going and ah all the time. And yet he's very, very successful, right? And so I just kind of let that go. And the more that I watch the most interesting and fascinating people, they go and ah quite a bit. So I let that go, and that was part of what healed me there. And I started to understand what speaking really is through practice, right? And so that's ultimately, at the end of the day, the whole point is that if you try to get it perfect, whether it's writing or it's speaking or it's reading, and you just hang on to, perfection and so forth, and you don't really pay attention to what the world really is and how the world really works, what A+ students really do and how they do it, and what internationally revered talk show hosts and philosophers and everything, what's really going on, what the game really is, you lock yourself out of it forever. You dive in and you practice and you understand as you go, and you learn by doing. So understanding is poorly misunderstood. Very, very poorly misunderstood. So if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Thumbs up for that crazy character too, with that mustache there. That's kind of a funny one. And of course, great, great individual to have in your mind for memory techniques. Speaking of using the alphabet, what better than the letter man himself? All right, let's check in with our chat here. And thanks, everybody, for being here. Hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world. What's exciting for you lately? And how are things going? Where are you at? Let me see. Where were we? Jonathan says, one question, Dr. Anthony. You consider that speed reading is real? Is it possible? Because I read in a research article that it isn't possible. Well, what's your definition of speed reading, Jonathan? Before that we go any further, let me know, what's your definition of speed reading? Mr. Space is in the house. How are things going in Queens today? Mr. Space, always good to see you. Hermes Thrice, I like that. Hermes Thrice, what an amazing screen name that is. I want to compliment you on that one. Like, for those who know about Hermes, that's very clever indeed. At least what I know about Hermes. All right. Good to have you here. Thank you for being here. Mr. Space says, this is my place. I feel better here. Excellent. Do you mean Queens or on our live streams? Harvinder says, hello, Master. I was a little bit busy teaching French at an NGO. I shall share my experience in the FB group. Excellent. Well, I look forward to that. Harvinder, a great member of the mastermind. Wonderful, wonderful to have you here, and I look forward to hearing about your French. Thank you for sharing there. And, wow, always great. You're so inspiring, especially where's your Dream Memory Palace roster at these days? All right, Adolfo says, I've tried a few speed reading courses, hasn't clicked for me. Reclaiming Life also digs the Hermes Thrice. Excellent, excellent. Hermes Thrice says, have you found any correlation between memory and the golden ratio? No, I can't say that I have, but I also haven't looked. What are you thinking? Let me know. So Adolfo says, has anyone had good results with speed reading? Look, I'm asking for Jonathan's definition of speed reading because a lot of people do not define it correctly. It's not really about speed. Keith is here from Singapore. Good to see you, Keith. Thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit that thumbs up and say hello in the chat. What's exciting for you these days? What's going on? So Hermes Thrice says, speed reading makes little sense to me. Slow and steady wins the race. Comprehension is more important than speed. I would tend to agree with that. Look, it doesn't matter if you're going a million miles an hour, if you're going in the wrong direction or no direction at all. Christian says, Adolfo, I have enjoyed speed reading, but I do not use the technique for study, simply for biographies or topics I am extremely familiar with. Yeah. So that's similar to my experience. There's a place for quote-unquote speed reading, but I'll sometimes use it also. I use it. I use the priming parts for everything. It's very, very important. Andrew says, hey man, all right, I'm a huge movie and music nerd known for reciting and recalling lyrics, movie lines, etc. How can I apply this gift to standard information? Great to have you here, Andrew. Wonderful to see you. And I'm not sure what you mean by gift to standard information, but if you are great for reciting and recalling lyrics and movie lines, how do you do it? And then tell us, and then we'll see how that can be transferred over to standard information. And what do you mean by standard information? It'd be very good to always think about defining your terms, because it's not necessarily one of the reasons why I mentioned Stanley Fish there, and if you read it, you will benefit, is that you're going to always want to focus in life, if you want to study and remember better, by making sure that you mean what you say and say what you mean. And when we have these, and look, I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I often have to, expand and so forth. But standard information, what the heck does this mean? Or go back to Lady B earlier today. Smarter. What does it mean? What does this mean? What do you mean? Mean something. Add a little bit more meaning. It's very important. Pat says, not unlike the language learning technique of reading comprehensible input of 60 to 75% of comprehension being the sweet spot. I like, Pat, that you're comparing it to that language learning approach. That's really, really important. Comprehensive input, that's a good parallel there. And one of the reasons why, and it goes back to this sort of sedimentation metaphor that I was giving there before, only so much ever collects, and when you build upon your strength, your existing competence, you ultimately will collect more than if you're just constantly wading out into obscure waters. And see, this is the thing with where speed reading can really work for you, is when you judge your priming or even your skimming based on existing competence that you have in a topic, you can get away with a lot more speed, so to speak, right? And basically what you're doing is not so much speed reading or even skimming or priming, but you're using critical analysis and judgment in a very fast way, and you'll pick up new things and be much more alert to what's going on there. That's another way of thinking about this. Adolfo says, Dave is my 18 in the major system. Nice. That beautiful. So that I wouldn't have thought of that. Yeah, that's a good one. Nice. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. David says, leaving at least 8 Lebanese Arabic words per day, learning at least 8 Lebanese words per day using your methods, working great. Need more memory palaces. Well, thanks for sharing that, David. Awesome. And please get more memory palaces. There are so many to be gotten. They're everywhere. Jonathan says, in the world, there are a lot of programs or courses that say multiply your speed for 10 or 12 times. Well, that number can be useful. Multiply your speed 10 times, but still, it comes back to your vision statement, knowing where you are now, etc. Reclaiming Life says to Jonathan, it would always depend on what your base speed is. My base speed of reading is faster than most any course claims the potential of. I need to intentionally slow down at times. Excellent. So Jonathan says 100% of retention in the memory with only one reading. So Jonathan, 100% of retention of what? That's the key. 100% retention of what? If you understand what books are, if you understand the field of knowledge, right? The redundancy of knowledge, then you're going to hit the game much harder and much better. And this is the problem. This is the problem that gets people trapped. So, like I have been saying a lot today, carpe diem and caveat emptor. It's an 80-20 rule thing that it's an 80-20 game that a lot of people are playing in speed reading. And sometimes you win that game and sometimes you lose. But if you really want knowledge, then as Hermes thrice said, it's comprehension is more important than speed. Very, very important. Andrew says, the gift bit was a sarcastic way of people saying, I am the keeper of useless info, and I'm curious how I can recall all this stuff, but remembering, say, a shopping list is a struggle. All right? Gotcha. All right, so first of all, is it really useless info? I can't imagine why any of that would be useless. And if you train your memory and you make sure that you get the memory kit and you start to work on the techniques, all of that stuff is so useful. It is more useful than you can ever imagine until you get in and start to train your memory. So I would push back and challenge this idea that that is useless information. And then I would say, if you're comparing this to a shopping list, does it really matter if memorizing a shopping list is a struggle? I mean, seriously, in that highest self within you, what business does anybody have memorizing a shopping list? What on earth is going on in a life that would be concerned about the food you're going to eat? I pause. Let's have some higher goals here. And then you'll see how your natural ability is such a rich resource. If you can pop quotes off the top of your head from movies and songs, man, those are powerful tools. If you are in the memory training world, in the world of mnemonics, memory palaces, and all the associated tools. So I would just set a higher goal than shopping lists. And I know you're just giving that as an example, but often the example tells the truth of where people are at. Which, speaking of that, if you have high goals, if you are a motivated, top-notch person who really wants to get the most out of your memory, I encourage you and invite you to apply for a spot in my Platinum program at magneticmerrymethod.com/YTP. And we're not going to be talking about shopping lists, but we might use them as an exercise in a foreign language if that floats your boat. But it certainly won't be in English. What's the point? Here's a rule of thumb. If you can write it down and get the job done, then save your memory techniques for the information that actually improves your life. That's a very, very key thing. It's I'm very insistent upon it because a lot of people are in this namby-pamby world of like, well, if only I can remember my shopping list better. Yeah, start higher. A lot of people out there will give you memory training all about shopping lists and random lists of words and yada, yada, yada. Whew. They do not have your higher purpose in mind. They do not have your higher self in mind, but I do. And I seek it every day, in every possible way. Because this namby-pamby, oh, well, we teach them the shopping list because they need to start small. You might need to start small. That might be true. But is that really true to your higher purpose, your higher being? I like the people who want to memorize scripture and then they talk about, I'm going to memorize the entire Bible. Well, great. And you could. You can. But how about just memorizing like learn about the redundancy of information, learn about the 80-20 rule, and just memorize the stuff most likely to get you closer to God. And then every day memorize something more likely to get you closer to God. Is it going to be the lists of all the sons and all the daughters and all that stuff? I don't know. That sounds like a shopping list. So keep these things in mind. Maybe I'm a little bit insistent and stubborn and so forth, but it's because I have your higher purpose in mind, your higher self in mind. I really do. And it makes me so sad when people give up on themselves and have these low goals that really are going to keep them low. Going to keep them in the struggle. It's really sad. Anyway, the world is what it is. Temba is here, says, thank you for your teachings. I am not fully engaged in your channel, but I learn a lot just by the little I view. Well, Temba, thank you for being engaged in the way that you are, and I hope you'll get more engaged. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. This is your opportunity to get your questions answered if you have them. And let's move on and talk about how to distinguish fact from opinion. Now, why will this help you remember more? Why will it help you study better? Well, because a lot of people don't remember more because they're not thinking about the information that's presented to them as it's presented to them, right? Now, I know that we just talked about how you got to keep moving forward and you don't have to understand everything, which is true and it's appropriate. But there are also times when it's appropriate to stop and reflect and to think scientifically as we read, to think critically, to think analytically. So how do we do this? Well, one of the things that we need to do is we need to understand what is the most likely way that we can distinguish fact from opinion in a way that serves our memory. And that is to read scientifically with the tool of science in your mind. Now, I'm not opening up a discussion right now from all these people who are like, yeah, but scientists can't be trusted. Scientists are blah, blah, blah. Scientists are not science, okay? They're humans. And yes, that's true. That's a problem. It's a problem in the world that some people can't be trusted in how that they present science, how they explain the results, the fruits of scientific analysis and study. But as we'll see, there's some tips here that can help you in this area. And it also just needs to be accepted that things are subject to change because science is a tool of verification. That's it. It helps you produce evidence that supports claims. And if you keep that in your mind while you're reading, you can remember more because this is a tool of memory. Thinking critically, scientifically, knowing that science is a tool of verification, and that by thinking in terms of verification, you are reading scientifically, then you're going to remember more automatically. Understand this. And you can just do it by thinking, is this a fact or is this an opinion? And if it is a fact, how is it a fact? And what is a fact anyway, right? So Nietzsche had a great thing about facts, and facts are essentially like everything else. They are becoming what they will become. They are a great sun, right? That is burning and changing as it burns and so forth. And a fact has staying power, like the sun does, but with more knowledge, it may fizzle out and die, right? It may burn out because it may no longer be true based on the surrounding elements that verify or sustain it. So facts are living, breathing things that undergo change. And there are ways that they change depending on perspective. So the way that the sun operates with Earth is different than the way that it operates with Mars based on perspective and so forth. Now, that doesn't mean relativism is in play. This is not relativistic thinking. This is perspective. But we can verify all of this using tools. Anyway, very few things should be accepted without verification. And so when we have a verification mindset as we're reading, we will remember more because we're thinking, we're processing, we're connecting, we're asking questions. So as you read, you can find out the how, the who, the why, the when, right? And this is very, very important. It's a powerful tool for memory. It's a powerful tool for understanding more critical thinking. Who does the validity serve if it is valid, right? Who is served if the claims that are made in what you're reading is valid? Very, very powerful. Now, that might need some unpacking, but we'll motor forward if nobody has any questions about it. But think about it. It's valid, but who gets the benefit of that being valid? And there's nothing sinister necessarily in that validity serving this person and not the other. But it's very, very important to think about that, right? And then that can help you with discernment of intention behind certain things and enable you to assess the reliability of the evidence, right? And so we can look for exaggerations, distortions. We can look for intentional errors, unintentional errors, and they often are unintentional. Some people make mistakes. If you don't make no mistakes, maybe you're in the God department. I don't know. But mistakes do get made. That's for sure. But we want to think very, very critically about just the fact that there will be unintentional errors in everything, and there may be intentional ones, right? And then we want to think in our minds always, what's the age of the author, general age or specific age, the location of the author, how many books have they written, right? This can be also applied to movies and documentaries and all that stuff, right? And why would this matter? Well, it will tell you a lot about the reliability of evidence, because some young new chicken on the farm, they may not really even know yet what evidence is or how to validate their stuff, but they might be very good at it. Also, you can think about the date of publication. You can think of the publisher. All of these things should be in your mind, and they will help you remember more. And one of the reasons why they'll help you remember more is because you can unpack so many memory tools from this knowledge. We've talked about that before, so I'll leave it at that unless there are any questions about it. And always open your mind, but weigh and consider. So as Francis Bacon said, read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. Some books are to be tasted, others to be swallowed. Ooh, I like those ones. And some few to be chewed and digested. That is, some books are to be read only in parts, others to be read but not curiously, and some few to be read wholly with diligence and attention. So those are words of wisdom. Let's check in with our chat here. Monsta's here. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and what's exciting for you lately. Is there anything exciting for you lately? Mr. Space says, I have mod goals. I get lost and I don't know where to start. I've not heard this term, mod goals or mode goals. What does that mean? Well, if you get lost and you don't know where to start, think about where you were when you got lost, and could you get started there again? Or could you reach out and get some guidance from someone who can help you create some better goals? Or could you just create some better goals on your own? Wouldn't that be great? I think you could. And one of the things you might think about is what we've talked about today. Is there something you could memorize to mull over? Like perhaps this quote here from Francis Bacon, and maybe deeply understand it from memory, right? That could be very, very powerful for you. David says, in my opinion, it's not about learning faster. It is about remembering what you learn. Using these memory techniques, I can see how study time is creating permanent knowledge now, unlike before. Well, thanks, David, for sharing that. And congratulations on learning and applying these techniques so that you understand them through action. And yeah, permanent knowledge. It is possible. Well, let's just say you might get hit by a brick. I hope not. Knock on everything. Like I think of this sometimes with these buildings, and I have that memory a lot because in Toronto, it was really, really sad. But when I was in my graduate years, somebody was walking down the street in Toronto and a brick hit him on the head. Young guy. But I hope he lived his life in a very high manner, like those amongst us who are actually taking action with these techniques, because then you'll have enjoyed the journey. And it doesn't matter how old you are and how much time was wasted in the past. Just get started now if you aren't already, and really take a moment to acknowledge what you've done so far and be grateful that the great universe was so kind to you that it bumped you into the memory tradition. However you got here, isn't that wonderful? Isn't it beautiful? What higher possible self could you be without it? I mean, no matter how you improve your memory, to have an improved memory, have a better memory that leads to more knowledge, making better decisions in life, and so forth. This is so powerful and profound, and it happens to those who do something to invest in their memory. Even without mnemonics sometimes, there are people who are able to do incredible things with their memory. But they need to welcome change and correction. And we learn and remember from our mistakes. This is so important. So many people are trying to avoid making mistakes. They're perfectionists. Oh, that's just the perfect way to trap yourself in stasis and never get what it is that you truly deserve out of life. You can't go in fear of making mistakes. You can't go in fear of making mistakes. Keep moving forward so you can learn and you'll remember more from the mistakes. Indeed. And you got to have an open acknowledgement of the limits, because the limits actually show you the territory yet to conquer. It's very, very important. And when you know this, you're going to learn and remember more faster because you're weighing what you know and what you don't know at the same time, and you're moving into that darkness. Aletheia is the Greek word that I love so much, that can be used for the truth. Heidegger translated it as unhiding. Ooh, I like that. Why? Well, one of the reasons why is in some ancient cultures, they believed that the light didn't come from the sun, it came from your eyes. And so the truth was unhidden by looking, right? And when you look and you cast light, then you unhide what is there. And there's an idea there that everything that is to be known is already there, right? It's just that you haven't seen it yet. So you unhide the truth. And so you kind of got to acknowledge where you're at and keep acknowledging where you're at and find better vantage points in your existing competence to cast that light into the darkness, to unhide all that territory left to conquer. But you also got to know that there's territory to be conquered. And that's one of the things where priming properly will teach you a lot. And we've talked about that before, how to prime properly. All right. So open acknowledgement of limits shows you the territory yet to conquer. And knowing that helps your memory automatically because you can compare and contrast, even if you're comparing and contrasting against the unknown. Now, some people are going to get overwhelmed by that, which is sad. But it should be exciting and motivating. Oh, there's so much more left to know. Yes, but that's always going to be true. And the more you know, the more you can know. But you have to take on the horrible burden of knowing that there's even more to know than you're ever going to have time to know. Which is where that radiant thinking comes in handy, because you produce. You produce more than you even have time to put out in the world. And you just keep on rocking and enjoy. It's amazing. All right, so here's another thing for you that will really help is just assume that others know things that you don't. Now, a lot of people do this in a negative sense. Oh, I don't know anything, poor me. Here's the world's smallest violin crying for me, etc. But there are some people who just really, they assume that they know, and they skip to the point. They skip to the point of, well, I already know this, and so they're gone. But you've got to bear fools out. Not too much. But you got to assume that you're the biggest fool of all and bear yourself out. So if you're like that and you just shut off and tune off and so forth, and I already heard that before. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you haven't. But you also have to, cherish your time and have some discernment around how much time you're going to spend on things. But never assume that you know what's in a source or in a person's head, and just ask people to state things in different ways. Or seek out statement in different ways. Read multiple books on the same topics for the difference so that you can weigh and consider, right? And this is super powerful, but a lot of people won't do it. They want everything in the one book. You can't get everything in one book. One is the most dangerous number ever. So you want to be reading multiple books for difference and understand that difference is always something that requires repetition. So I mentioned Deleuze earlier, and this is a very, very powerful thing to understand, is that there is no same. This is never the same. Every moment is different. It is unique unto itself. And so repetition is not an evil. Repetition is often the key. Repetition is often the key. Very, very important. And so, make sure that you are aware of the difference in repetition, and you will succeed very, very highly and well. All right. So, we're going to continue our series on how to study and remember to celebrate, for part of the world anyway, back to school coming up soon. We're going to talk about how to stay alert while studying, fundamentals of argumentation, systematic reading, and so forth. And if you're excited about that, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit the thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions while we're here now together. And if not, no problemo. But that's what we're going to cover in our series throughout August. And you'll want to make sure that you have the notifications enabled, not only in terms of YouTube world here, where you say, bell, yes, give me all the notifications, but also in your app or your device or whatever. Make sure that that accepts notifications from YouTube, or you'll miss out. And if you're interested in this or you have any questions, let me know. And we're going to cover these between now and September on our live streams. And I really look forward to meeting you then. Let me know if you have any questions while we're still here. I'll give you an invitation again to apply for a spot in the Platinum program at magneticmarymethod.com/YTP. And I really look forward to seeing your application if you feel called to your highest possible self. And Sridhar says, your teachings are truly practical and visionary. I haven't been following you much lately, but they did work when I followed. Excellent. That's a great point, Sridhar. Thanks for your kind words. Thanks for being an active individual. And here's the thing that I would really say and point out there is that the beautiful problem of memory training is that you need to keep memory training alive in your life in order for it to continue to work. It's the same thing with a muscle. I stop going to the gym, the muscles start to fade. Now, they can last actually for quite some time. They ain't going to go away overnight. But by continually training your memory or your muscles, they will maintain and stay. If you want them to grow, just like with muscles, you do have to rest from time to time. You need to take a week off from the gym every once in a while to rest, to truly rest, to really rest. And I believe that's the same thing with your mind and your memory muscles. But you've got to add some more weight also from time to time. This is why in the masterclass, I have some training drills for you to make sure you're adding extra weight from time to time. And you also know to take it away from time to time and how to do it. It's very, very important because you need to be a little bit systematic about that in your training so that you have continual growth that doesn't die and continual enthusiasm so that you keep showing up, right? And that you have the tools and resources when you do fall off the horse, so to speak, or you take a break, this is a little bit too long, you have the skill of getting back up on the horse, which is very, very important. Month says, my intent inhibition is low, therefore I come up with creative images quickly, but the side effect is constantly overthinking. I really need help with that. Oh, I'd be happy to help you with that, Month. And I suggest that you apply for the Platinum program if you are called to do so at magneticmarymethod.com/YTP. And I'd love to hear more about that because I am very, very confident that we can make that a reality for you. And constantly overthinking things has a solution. It has a reason too, often more than one reason. So if you are an extraordinary individual who wants to overcome your problems, make sure that you apply for a spot in the Platinum program at magneticmarymethod.com/YTP. And I'm calling to your highest self. Indeed. All right, everybody. So again, next sessions, how to stay alert while studying, fundamentals of argumentation, systematic reading. All of these will help you improve your memory. And these are the fundamentals of how to study and remember more. And, you know, it's just incredible to me how much I remember from my years of study, but how it's all post, like the big stuff that I remember is post memory techniques. And before that, it's kind of, well, yeah, this, that, and the other thing. And I wish I remembered more. I wish so much that I had put in the time and the effort to learn these techniques and to be using them during my MA or my first MA. I used them in my second MA, which was great. But they're during my BA in particular, because I could have just so much more. And going back to where we started, that's because the true point of education is to be able to make better decisions in the world that make a win-win for the long term for you and your family and your immediate world and the entire world beyond that, because you're able to understand really what opportunity is in the world, to see opportunity, to discern which opportunities are not opportunities at all, so you're not wasting your time dragging your feet, hanging out with tire kickers, etc., which, may happen from time to time. You may be called to do it, and you may need to in order to learn. But you want to learn so that you can see opportunity, know what your fears are, and access the strengths needed to take action anyway, so you can create those long-term win-wins and just live the best possible life in the world that you can. So Jonathan here has a question. Thank you for your question, and thank you very much, everybody who's here now. If you have questions, now's your opportunity to fire away anything, whatever you may have on your mind. I will be delighted to answer those for you. And I know it's summer. Everybody's feeling a little lazy and so forth. But now, preparation, right? Where preparation meets opportunity, there is no ceiling. So if you're going back to school, or if you had kids going back to school, now's the time to start preparing. And one of the things that I always loved in university, even before I had memory techniques, was getting the reading list in advance. So we would get them around July, and then we would have the time in August to go into the bookstore. I remember at York University, I don't know if they still have it there, but all the textbooks that you needed for your courses were in the basement underneath the main bookstore. The main floor there has pens. Great memory palace, by the way. If you're at York University, or if you're ever in Toronto, go and visit it. You can make it as a memory palace. So, but I don't know what it looks like these days. It was 2009. Hard to believe, 2009, I finished my PhD. April 3rd. Never forget that day. Wow, amazing. Anyway, it was a bookstore that had, the pens and the popular books on the top. But then in the basement, it had all the textbooks. And I used to get them the minute I could. Bam, I'd be there. I'd get every single one, and I'd start reading from day one. And this was a powerful tool, and really one of the key sources of the A pluses that I got, which I'm just always so tickled pink that I have so many A pluses on my BA record, even though I didn't have memory techniques. But the sad thing is I didn't have memory techniques, so who knows what I knew back then. And I like to reread books because I'm able to recapture some of that, because it's really important to go and water the plants and weed. All right, so that was one thing. And the other thing that I used to do also is I'd get the syllabus the first day of class, and they would have the assignments, and then I would just get started on the assignments. So if I knew there was going to be an essay, and sometimes they were very unclear, just the date of the assignment, and I'd beeline to the professor and say, look, can you give me any insight about what this is going to be? I want to have the additional reading done. I want to even get started with my draft, etc., etc. And this was great, because all the books that I wrote during university and so forth, I had so much free time because I had most of my work done well in advance. And I really encourage you to do that, or share that with your kids so that they can also get the A pluses and just have so much more joy in their university years as a result. Even though I drank so much and I had all this depression stuff, well, whatever. I don't think that was a result of any of this. I still had a lot of joy, even despite all those problems, for much of the time. And who knows why I got hit with such a terrible depression. Maybe it was so we could do this today. I don't know if there's any meaning in the universe, but if there is, then maybe that's why. All right, Jonathan says, how can you recommend us practice the repetition of new knowledge? I mean, about the interval between the repetitions. Okay, so here's the thing. There's like this theory of the magic number of the interval between repetitions. Do you think that's realistic? Do you think that there's some, I don't know, device in the sky that can read your mind and say, oh, now's the time for the repetition? I see all this stuff with the repetition intervals and all this, and I look at it and I think, really? How do they know? How do they know? General principle, sure. But for you? Yes, long, dramatic radio silence. This is not realistic at all. What matters is that the intervals serve you and that you figure out what intervals you need by creating your own systems and showing up to do not the repetition, but the radiant recall. I like that better. Thank you, Tony. The radiant recall. I think that's good. Recall rehearsal is about creative revisitation and getting it done with as many as you need and as few as necessary, and any extra that you add with joy of using the techniques. That's what it's really all about. So, how do I recommend that you practice this? Have information that improves your life. Have your Memory Palace network ready to rock. Have all the tools inside ready, because you're going to want to use them. And they're super powerful and wonderful indeed in every way. And then get in there and do battle against the Ebbinghaus curve, as you call it, forgetting curve. So Hermann Ebbinghaus, great person for us to model, you know. He made these experiments and he dove in and he rocked on and he got it done in order to test his memory and figure out all these sorts of things. And I was really inspired by that, and that's why I do so many tests upon myself. It's because he exemplifies exactly what needs to be done. It's not, I like Jonathan calling it the Ebbinghaus curve, even though it's usually called the, or at least in my reading, maybe it's called that in other books, but I'm not sure. But the forgetting curve is usually how I come across it. But at the end of the day, that's exactly right. The Ebbinghaus curve. It's the curve that occurred to him. So you need to figure it out for yourself. And it's going to change based on the different information. So if you don't know the Magnetic Memory Method, make sure you go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Take the free course, take it thoroughly and completely and without hemming and hawing, and get it done. Set aside some time next weekend or this afternoon or whatever, and make sure you get it done from beginning to end. And be thorough. Be a diligent person who completes things from beginning to end. Because there's no point in showing up for the next session on systematic reading if you're not going to systematically go through that course. Actually, there is a point. Just keep coming. Nudge yourself forward. Wherever you're at, get to what you need and keep it on. It's very, very important. Christian, my man, so good to see you. I was thinking of you the other day in Brain Games. I know you're gone now, but I got to ask you if we can somehow figure out how to get that Brain Games thing on our live streams as the intro and the outro. That'd be awesome. All right. So let me know if you have any more questions about that, Jonathan. But at the end of the day, you got to dive in. You got to get it done. Okay. So Chepatos. I like that name, Chepatos. Dr. Metivier, what is the closest to permanent in relation to long-term memory? Well, that's a good question. Imagine you're in your deathbed, and whatever it is you want to remember the most on your deathbed comes to mind. I think that's as close to permanent as we're going to get, right? Okay, cool. Thank you, Christian. Yeah, and I'll see if Ali can help me put that in there somehow. Maybe we should do a music video or something. Anyway, I want to have it either as the intro or the outro or both. That's just amazing. And if you haven't heard that, make sure you look up Christian's name there, Google it, and Brain Games, and he's on the podcast. And oh man, we had a great conversation. And we also have a conversation about memorizing poetry that just super inspiring and inspired me. And wow. It's going to inspire you too. And we get into the tips and the real deal of doing all this stuff. So thank you very much for everything you do, Christian. Super inspiring, and knowledge for for the rest of you, in addition to inspiring. So Chepetos, I don't know what permanent means really, but at the end of the day, the most practical thing is exactly that example. Deathbed recall. Mr. Space says, your help have a meaning to me, meaning. Your help has a meaning to me. Thank you for who you are. Well, thank you for who you are, Mr. Space. And please, please, dive in, take action. If it's right for you, apply for a spot in my Platinum program. I'll post that link for you all again. And if it's not right for you, if you don't think you're prepared, then just make sure you get the free course to get started to see what you can do. So you can either go to magneticmarinmethod.com/YTP, too much choice, decision anxiety, or just get started with the free course. It's up to you. Choose your own adventure. All right. So Dr. Shirag Dalal is here. Thank you for being here, Dr. Dalal. Any mind memory techniques can help with adult ADD and motivation. Yes. Well, I'm not an expert in any sense on ADD, but probably if they'd kept me longer in the hospital, they'd say I had that too. Because, look, my mind is filled with all kinds of stuff running left, right, and center. And this training itself has really helped calm and focus that. And one of the reasons why that it works, especially the meditation and relaxation parts of the Magnetic Mirror Method training, is that you begin to separate your mind and what's going on with it from what you are, what you really are. Which, if you learn what you really are, it's just very, very calm, ordinary, unbesmirched awareness. And that can be hard to swallow if you haven't ever experienced it. But once you begin to experience it, and memory training, I think, is one of the fastest paths to get there when you combine it with meditation, which is profound and wonderful in every way. What happens to you there is you have that separation, and then you learn to not take your mind so seriously, and you put it aside, and you get busy. You get busy doing what really matters as much as possible, as often as possible, and as systematically as possible, insofar as systems actually can be systematic, because real systems are flexible, and then they don't necessarily appear like systems. But I want to invite you, whatever your limitations might be, to apply to the Platinum program at magneticmarinmethod.com/YTP, so we can talk more about that if you are called to do so. But at the end of the day, motivation doesn't necessarily work, and it doesn't exist. I didn't want to go to the gym this morning, but I went there even though I wasn't motivated to do so. So how does that work? How is that possible? To go and lift heavy weights and then I thought after the gym, I don't feel like walking my memory palace, my little memory palace journey around. I don't feel like it. Well, feel. If we did things based on feeling, oh my goodness, we'd probably still be rubbing stones against wood and hay to produce fire. But man, that was too much hard work. So we didn't wait for motivation. We innovated based on, who knows? No one was there. I'm not going to speculate, but we can generally say that pain was a motivation for changing the approach, and then pleasure helped continue the approach that went from fire to airplanes, just being able to put fire inside of a machine so it could propel itself fast enough to get humans up into the sky. And it's the same thing with your training, your body, your mind, whatever it is. What can you do to take pain and pleasure so you don't need motivation, but you Pavlovianly, is that a word? Pavlovianly rig the game in your favor so you show up whether you're motivated or not. In fact, you might even find that you just show up on autopilot anyway. So when I sit down and I start to go and memorize more of this or whatever it is, I'm not even really willfully in it anymore because it's just happening on autopilot because I have so much pleasure linked around it and so much pain from not doing it. And it's astonishing to me, basically 2.5 years now of meditation every day with long form recitation that gets longer and longer and longer week after week after week because I memorize more and more and more of these texts. And it's so clear that I just keep showing up to do it because I have more pleasure from it. And I know the pain of not doing it, not practicing anymore. So I just show up. And I found myself at the gym this morning, even though I didn't want to be there. I found myself walking around, even though I didn't want to do my morning walk. And then bang presto, it's done. And you'd better believe it. There's a lot of things in my life that if I had to be motivated to do them, if I had to wait for motivation, if I had to wait for inspiration, not a good strategy. Not a good strategy whatsoever. We're going to talk more about this on how to stay alert while studying, which will be one of our next sessions, and systematic reading as well. We'll talk about that. So if you're new here and you aren't subscribed to this channel, get subscribed. Hit that thumbs up while you're doing it. Make sure you you allow the notifications, and make sure your device is also notified so you will be alerted when we go live next time. And yeah, the fundamentals of argumentation will help as well. And if you know what argumentation is all about, or at least something about what it is, you'll remember more immediately. And that's a great thing. And knowing that is also a great way to keep yourself inspired and to keep your mind clear, because you'll be listening to what people say and what books say at a different level. You'll be analyzing it from that angle, which keeps your mind focused and sharp. So even with an ADD rattled situation, if you can memorize certain principles, and I know there's some arguments that you shouldn't memorize, logical argumentation and so forth, but we have that problem. And I highly encourage everybody to watch that video on the 3 memory expert la-di-da nonsense things that they say. And one of them is that you come to understand things that they say you shouldn't memorize things you don't understand. But I say the opposite. You come to understand through memorization and the accretion of knowledge over time. Month says, what is the platinum course of the MMM? It's a program, and the knowledge of it will be revealed to you after you apply to see if you have a spot. But it's a 3-month program, and I would absolutely love to see your application. There are some requirements, and those requirements will be made clear by you when you fill out the application, whether that 3-month program is suitable for you. You really need to have high goals. And if you don't have high goals, for those of you who weren't here at the beginning, I highly recommend reading Anthony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. It will help you if my material for you on creating a vision statement hasn't, and he'll go deeper into this pleasure and pain matrix. And motivation is for other people. You don't need to wait for it. You don't even particularly need it. And in fact, the need to be motivated is often what holds you back in life. Please, please, please don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for inspiration. Even if it comes, you don't need it. You don't need it. You just need to dive in and have goals that you actually want to complete. And there are all the resources under the sun. I was going to take away that vision statement live stream, but I thought I'd keep it there for you to help inspire you. So it's still there. Go and take advantage of it and create your vision statement. And I would love to see your vision statement. And if you'd be so kind as to post it on the forum, that's at magneticmarionmethod.com/forum. And then others could potentially engage in it with you and benefit as a result. So, everybody, I hope to see you on our next session about how to stay alert while studying the fundamentals of argumentation and systematic reading. This is the plan for August. We may do some other stuff in August as well. We shall see. We shall see. See who's alive and alert and awake. But again, let me reassert to you the very, very important point that you really want to make sure that you understand the point of everything that you're studying. And you want to know that there's opportunity at the other end. And you want to be awake and alert to what that opportunity is. And you really want to understand what your fears are that come up. So you can get them out of the way so you can focus more on what you want to study. You'll instantly remember more because you're not worried about fear. Let go of the outcome. Understand all the problems involved in information and so much redundancy there, and yet it's beautiful. All that redundancy is such a tool for learning faster and remembering more. You just have to take it for what it is. And if you are even remotely interested in how you can accelerate all of this and memorize vast amounts of information very, very quickly, I encourage you to apply for a spot in the Platinum program. Go over to magneticmarymethod.com/YTP and submit your application. And, well, what can I say? It's always a pleasure and an honor to meet with you here on these live streams. YouTube says that they may be taking away live streams, or people have said that YouTube has said that they may be taking away live streams. That'd be very sad, I think, don't you? Well, if that's the case, I've heard that it's not going to happen until later. And I'm not sure if it applies to these live streams or if it's just Hangouts, but make sure you're on my email list in case those things go away, because we do live streams off of this platform, and we could still continue to hang out, but you'll need to be registered at magneticmarymethod.com to receive those emails and be invited to those private sessions. So thank you everybody for being here today, and until we have a chance to speak again, come see me at magneticmarymethod.com and keep yourself magnetic and give up the need for motivation. Please. You don't need it. You just need a system. You need a strategy. You need techniques that enable you to show up even when you're not motivated. And really, if you want motivation on autopilot, I think that the best possible way to get it is through memory. Because there's nothing quite like having information in your mind, especially when you memorize the stuff, that really, really helps remind you of what the world really is and how it really operates, insofar as anybody can know what is real. So I'll leave you with that thought, and until we speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.
384626 4338 3279 5028 84 1971 69 399375.
Hi, my name is Paul, and I've taken a few courses by Anthony Metivier, but I felt that the experience of doing it today live was the biggest advantage. Anthony has a gift in simplifying complex concepts, and I feel that I've really come away today with practical skills that I can now use effectively. It was great to immerse ourselves in the situation, to be able to apply the time, because when we're at home we may not take the time to do the memory exercises that we were doing today. I felt particularly that the thing that we did at the end of today was something that is totally unique in memory training, which is 3 days of memory, which is how to practice your skills. I've read many memory books and I've never come across a system laid out as to how to practice what you've learned, and this is what I gained today from Anthony's course. So I'd give it 10 out of 10. Thank you.
5342 1170 679.